In this video, I'm gonna show some of the blueprint scripting for the lava boss. It's pretty much a continuation of the previous video where I started to show the modeling and rigging and a little bit of that stuff. It's just to get a little bit of a more in-depth look into one of the characters, and I thought the boss was a good character to do that with. Okay, so I guess where I'm going to start really is with the animation blueprint, because the way this character works is a lot is kind of a lot of the events happens through the animation. Um, so I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail. I'm going to try not to go into a huge amount of detail. I'm just going to give a quick overview, because nothing I do on this character is really anything super special or complicated or anything like that. It's all fairly simple stuff, but it's kind of the reason why I wanted to show it. It's just to show that something like this, it might seem complicated, but it's not really that complicated. Okay, so pretty much what I do on this thing is generally I just read in a bunch of variables, because I kind of set animation states through the blueprint, obviously. So I just read in those variables, and then also on the actual character there's a bone that I use for the for the head, to look at the player. And so this is what I do here. So I just get the player location, which I calculate inside the actual boss blueprint, and I read that in, and then I just interpolate it to a new location so that the head looks around smoothly. So in the animation graph, again, super simple, nothing nothing really special going on. So I'm going to read it from the back. So there's all my animations. So you can go from idle into any one of these, and the way I did it is pretty much to go from idle into something, and yeah, so that's the way I do it. Even regardless of how quickly maybe I might swap between different things, sometimes it'll not even look like he's going back into idle, but he does. And then there's a little bit of a specific setup going on when doing the actual ground attack. He's left open for attacks on his arms, and so when eventually the arm breaks, he goes into a new animation, and so that's what this does. It just splits out into this new animation and then eventually goes back into idle. So that's pretty simple, and I'll expand this for his other attacks and stuff that I still have to work on. Okay, so I guess back to this. So the layered blend per bone, it's when I actually hit the arm. So when his arms are on the ground and he gets hit, there's a reaction, and all that reaction really is a pose that gets blended in through these nodes. So there's one for the right arm and one for the left arm. So it's actually one pose that I exported, and I blended in just either on the right arm or the left arm separately. So this is where I use the player location to transform the this is where I use the player location to transform the bone. That's basically, it's just a bone that's floating around here, and it'll kind of move around wherever the player goes. So I have something to look at. So this is where the look at happens, and then this look at the looks at that bone, so that you can actually see that's where the bone is by default. And yeah, so of course I've got an alpha that I can ramp in and out through the blueprint, whether I want to look at or not. Because at some points when the boss is in sort of attack, or the main attack mode, he's following the player around, he's rotating around and looking at the player and doing all that. But when he goes into the ground attack, it needs to be basically reset. It needs to be centered out in the world, so that the ground attack always happens in the same place. And so I can ramp this look at in and out as needed. And then the correctional rotation, because the head bone doesn't face directly forward or directly up, it kind of faces at an angle. And this is something I didn't even consider when I first rigged him. If I considered it when I first did the actual rig, I probably would have done it a little bit differently, but it's not a big deal, so I just do a corrective rotation. So with the look at, his face actually comes down into his body, and then I just use a corrective rotation to actually fix that. So if I do look at, and I zero this out, you can see that's not really what you want. So that's what that's about. So I actually ultimately used it to just readjust it so he's looking a little bit down and so on. So it's a good way to just kind of tweak your final pose. So, pretty simple. So also on the event graph, I have a bunch of notifies that I call through the animations. Spawning and throwing the rock, crushing the rock, or whether I can attack or not. And this one is mainly for, when I get toward, when some of the animations are loopable and some are not, and the ones that are not, I would tend to call, if it's an attack animation, right at the end I would call this maybe. This is a specific one for stopping the ground pound attack, and this is a specific one for calling it when it starts. So a lot of the behavior actually comes from the animation notifies, or not behavior, but reactions to the behavior, however you want to say it. Okay, so in the actual blueprint, I'm going to try and run through this pretty quick. So I'm just going to jump in. So on begin play, do some stuff. Basically specifically set the rotation for the body, just to make sure that it's essentially zeroed out. Start the head look at thing, create a dynamic material so I can actually, when I hit the arms and stuff, the material will update. Basically what happens is it turns red and eventually it'll sort of pulse. It's an indicator to let you know how far you are from breaking the arm. Basically a damage meter. Instead of having a HUD damage meter, it will be purely a visual thing. I attach the rocks to the guy, to his hands, and I set them to be hidden. So what that's doing, I have these, I'm just gonna kind of fly in here. So I have these rock models in here, and that's just when he picks up a rock to throw. As he picks it up, this is what you're looking at, and as he throws it, this model gets hidden, and then the projectile gets spawned in. It's also, okay, I'll get there. Okay, so I pretty much control the behavior through the tick, and even though I mean I use a bit of a delayed tick, so through the different steps, so I'll calculate the look at, um, kind of set the positions and stuff that I want to set, and calculate the look at, and do the actual rotation, the actual rotation of the body and stuff like that. I have these arrow components, these ones. Oops. So what I use these for is for aiming. So when he throws the rock, so this arrow will update and look at the player, and when I throw the rock, I use this arrow as an aiming device, basically. So always throw the rock at the player where the player is currently, um, at the time of release of the rock. So that gets updated there. So I mean, a few things happens on tick, but this character is so simple that it's not a big deal to do some stuff. It's not that big of a deal. So then, after those things, I mean, even within this, I think I might do, yeah. So I update um, the main body rotation and all that stuff. I update that per frame, and then I also update. Then I actually delay after that. So I update that, and then with a little bit of a delay, then only I update the arrows, and then going into the next bit, I have another bit of a delay, and so pretty much from what I've gathered from Epic's videos, I watch most of Epic's blueprint videos and stuff like that, so I can learn as much as possible. The 0.0 delay is essentially is a frame delay, so uh, you get a little bit of a gap there before updating something on tick, and I would set something like this up in order, so the stuff that's most important comes first, and the less important stuff comes later, and I keep delaying in between so that stuff doesn't overlap too much. So I get the distance for the player and set the distance. If the player or anything is not valid, then I just hard code it to 10. So essentially the boss will go into his idle state. Okay, so yeah, so all the main stuff happens in here, and this looks kind of complicated, but it really isn't. Well, I guess it doesn't look specifically complicated. There's just a lot of nodes, but as you recall from the animation blueprint, I have a lot of booleans that I read in from this blueprint that essentially sets the states for the boss. So it'll say if I'm in idle, none of the other stuff is true. So idle is true and everything else is false. And if I'm attacking, then attacking is true and everything else is false. And I have attacking for left arm and right arm, and so on and so on. So I have pretty much a boolean for all of those states, and mostly that's to take care of the animation side of things. And in the blueprint here, it's to kind of keep track of what's busy happening. So that's really how the boss works. It's essentially just a bunch of switches or ifs. If this, then do this. If this, then do this. And his actual visual behavior is all really just, or his underlying control is all really controlled through the animation. There's no AI scripting or anything like that. This is all, and also it's just an actor. So you can see up there the class is just an actor. It's not a pawn. or anything special like that. It's just a simple actor with a skeletal mesh and a blueprint to tell the mesh to play some specific animations at specific times. That's really all it is. So coming into this piece, which really this is his AI, if you want to label it as that. So again, that's delayed by 0.2 seconds. So you can see all my tick events is delayed by a certain amount. So they're all, um, so there's no big overlaps on the tick going on. And all these things do really is set a bunch of variables and maybe call some other events. But so I'm checking the distance of the player because I have very specifically I have it so there's a near distance and a far distance. If you're far away, he's doing these things, and if you're close, he's doing these things. So that's why that's there. So pretty much here. Yeah, okay, so then I'm just checking. So I'm checking the current distance against a specific value that I enter. So 500. So if the reason why I did that is so I can have a really far distance. So if I'm really far away, also the boss kind of starts to idle, and that may or may not be part of actual gameplay. That I just added that in for my own sake so that I can test the level and run away from the boss and he doesn't start throwing rocks at me across the level and doing some weird stuff like that. So yeah, so I do that check, and again I have a delay so essentially with each step that the thing takes, I have basically a single frame delay, just to not overlap things. So my tick event is fairly controlled in that sense, where it'll kind of step through it on like a frame basis, and in the case of this, there's a much longer delay. But then again, after that, everything that happens after that again steps down on a frame basis. So this branch is just a check against this, check with this distance state to see am I far away or am I not far away, and then I set it. I use a do once just to set it. So I mean this will constantly change. So it'll be like I'm now far or I'm now not far or whatever, and if I'm far away, then call this event, and that's part of the rest of the blueprint and whatever, and each time I switch over, it resets the previous one so that next time that it can be set. So the idle sequence, when I can't attack and I'm not doing the ground pound attack, go through, otherwise do nothing. The do nothing, basically it'll be in some other animation loop at that point. Did I spawn a rock or not? If I did spawn a rock, but and this is now like where all these nodes. So now I'm in a specific state. So now I spawned a rock, but I didn't throw it. Okay, so sorry, I I just have to make sure again that I'm saying the right thing. So I have to set the throw to true because of some reason, and then basically all the other booleans I set to false, and I set idle to true because it's because now he should be going back into idle. I think I have to set this to true to to get the animation blueprint to read the correct boolean, and then basically just wait a little bit. So pretty much this allows for the animation to blend out. Then can crush. This again is just for the animation blueprint to read this as true, and now he starts crushing the rock, and immediately after I set that to can crush, I set it back false. And really this is, I mean, there's ways you can do this differently, but this is since I created this very early on, the original base version of this character I actually created very early on, and this is sort of my linear way of thinking of getting this to work. And so really what this is it switches the animation on and switches it off immediately, but the animation blueprint so crush. So I can go into crush when can crush is true, but then I can only go out of it when the animation is almost done playing. So that's how that works. So that's why I can switch that on and then off, and it'll actually, so that's purely controlled through the animation. So I can say can crush and then switch it back off, and it's still playing, and it'll automatically go back and continue its thing. And this will call the correct notifies to say I'm done doing the crush, continue on doing, checking for the player and attacking the player, or whatever the case might be. Same for the left arm. So if the right arm didn't spawn a rock, then this will be false, and it'll come in and it'll see, well, did the left arm spawn a rock or not? And if it did and it didn't throw it, going to crush. Otherwise, nobody spawned one and nobody was supposed to throw one or do anything. Just go back to normal, go to idle, do the head look at, all that stuff. So this pretty much just checks the state for, do I crush the rock or not? The attack sequence, very similar thing. I'm gonna see, can I attack and am I far away? If I am far away, then check again, can I attack? Should I do ground pound or throw? Because that's kind of random. It'll based on this gate, it'll go to one or the other. And well, I guess technically it's not random. It's one or the other. So if it's busy with pounding the ground, next time it's gonna throw the rocks, and if it's done throwing the rocks, next time it's gonna pound the ground, and so on and so on. What is random is the timing of it. So pretty much just set idle to false and go into the attack. So it'll set whatever is necessary for the animations to play. This is the throw rock, so I do want the head to look at. And I would be throwing the rock throwing is a looping animation, so I just enable it and I let it run, and it's going to keep throwing for this random period of time, and then it's going to set it to false, and it's going to go back through the loop and check and see what's going on, what should it be doing. I'm gonna play this, and let me just do this. So you can see how the thing is checking. So now obviously he's in idle state. I'm way too far away. He doesn't want to do anything. So I'm getting closer, so I don't know if you saw that, but it went into the rock attack loop. So now, it doesn't keep going into the loop. It kind of sets the boolean so that once it's in the loop, then it's technically false. It's not doing much. If you look at the actual graph, it's not doing much while it's doing these things. At this point, the animations are controlling what it's doing. So now I'm going to change the state. So boom, now I'm changing the state, and I died. So I'm just going to go into guard mode so I don't die. So there you can see the material change. So I'm changing state, so you can see the path is now changed. He now keeps checking. He basically just keeps checking. He says, okay, I'm in idle, so I'm going to go to idle. Am I still in idle? Okay. And really, at this point, what will happen eventually when I do all the work is to get him to do close attacks. So at this point, he's still going to be attacking. Right now, he just goes into the idle state. So this is actually a temporary thing. But there he goes, and you can see he went into the rock throw. Next time he's going to go. So I forced to crush the rock, and he's going to go into the ground pound. And so that's how that works. Pretty simple. So all these other things are just events, custom events that I call to make things actually happen. So this really I would call the AI of the character, and you can see how simple it is. There's a lot of nodes because I have to keep track of. I just make sure that if something isn't supposed to be true at this point, even though it might not be true anyway, I just set it to false. Or if something is supposed to be true and it might be true anyway, I just specifically set it to true. I pretty much set everything with the state changes so that I'm sure that every state is completely correct. So that there's no weird like overlap thing happening, or it's going into the wrong branch or something like that. So that really is what controls the whole boss. And then through the animations, I actually control specific state changes. Like I basically tell the guy, okay, now you can attack. And then the animation takes care of picking up the rock, throwing the rock, and eventually stopping the attack is then control through here again. And then so this sets the state, and the animation sets does the actions, I guess you can say. So with damage, I've got some specific collision capsules that I use for damage. So you can't really see it, it's inside the arm. So I'll do wireframe. So it's just a capsule sitting there, and that's what you hit when you hit the arm. The other capsule that's sitting there is for collision for the player, so you don't run through the arm. And I've also got one for the body. So that, again, pretty simple. So the damage, currently I'm applying it very directly. I'm not actually applying it through a damage event, or cause damage, or receive damage event. I'm just applying damage directly. I'm just saying, as soon as you detect overlap on this capsule, add to the damage, and I'm adding a very specific damage amount. It doesn't actually matter what attack you're doing, or it's always going to be the same amount of damage. Whether I change that or not, I'm not 100% sure yet. Currently, that's what I've got going. Well, if I do want to change that, I'll possibly change this to a damage causer receiver event type of thing, or I'll just feed a value. I'll still use this setup, but I'll just feed a value through the from the player side. We'll see. So if it's less than the actual total damage, which currently is 10. It's pretty low. It's just for testing purposes. Then just go into the damage effects. I'm just spawning some particles. I'm ramping in. Remember I was talking about the damage hitting the arm has a pose that blends in and out. I'm ramping that in and out through a timeline. So the timeline just ramps that. So pretty much it goes, it reacts immediately and then blends back out. And spawn some particles and scale the material value so that the red starts blending into the arm. And the same for the left arm. So that's pretty simple. And eventually the arm breaks, and I just set some booleans and stuff. So now the right arm is broken. Now I can't damage it anymore. Stop that attack event immediately. The can attack event, let me just make sure what that's doing again. Okay, so the can attack event is, I think originally I was gonna do more in here. That's why I made it a custom event, but it ends up just switching off attack. It's pretty funny, but anyway. So don't do the look at. The boss now is inactive. He can't do anything anymore. I'm switching out the skeletal mesh, and this is what I wanted to talk about earlier, but I thought I would leave it until I get to this part. So the way I'm actually showing or updating that the fact that the arm is now broken is I actually have multiple skeletal meshes in here. So there both his arms are broken, and all I do is I switch whichever one I want on, or and the previous one I switch off. I hide or unhide whichever one is supposed to be the current one. So the reason why I do that is originally in the UDK, what I did was I would actually simply assign a new skeletal mesh, and that's technically what you'd think that's the right way to do it, and that really is the right way to do it. But the reason why I don't do it in the Unreal Engine 4 version is as soon as I switch over the skeletal mesh to a new mesh, the animations will reset. So let's say he's busy doing whatever he's doing. He's busy actually playing the arm is getting broken animation, and I swap and it just kind of started playing, and I swap the mesh, and now that animation resets and starts playing again. There's basically a visual jump in between where the swap happens. So yeah, that's not good at all. And so my way around that is to basically have all the meshes there already and just switch whichever one I want on or off. Now this approach might not work at all for you. Your boss might be this 50 or 100,000 poly thing with whatever amount of texture maps on it, or whatever the case might be. It might be not a good way to do it. In my case, it's perfectly fine. There's my game's memory footprint is so small that I can probably have 10 of these guys on the screen and it won't matter. So or 10 different ones using the same technique, and it probably won't matter. So to me, in my project, it's not a big deal. If you were doing something similar, you might run into problems with it, or you might not. It just depends on the project, really. So that's what that's all about. So set the mesh, and then so if the left arm is broken, uh, then do this. Set the skeletal mesh and set that hidden and set that hidden. If not, then set the I think I did this check. Why did I do this check? This basically because I have to reset these things. Because I have to reset these things, I just have to make sure that I reset it on the correct arm. And then I just have a boolean that says the arm is breaking or is broken or whatever the case might be, so that when I switch states now it's based on a new form of boss. So now the boss has one less arm, so now the animations has to change and the behavior has to change. Now when he throws a rock, it needs to only happen with one arm, and so on. So and then the same for the other arm. So it's just inverted. So as soon as I think yeah. So anyway, I was thinking of something completely different. But anyway, so eventually when both arms are broken, I actually just have him go into idle state currently, because again, there's going to be some major state changes. So there's the far away attacks, there's the close by attacks, there's the main ground attack, which eventually allows you to attack back. There's the broken arms versions of all those attacks, and then there's the both arms are now broken, completely new sort of state. And I'm not going to talk about what's going to happen there, but there's it's going to go further. He's not done by that point. Yeah, he's still gonna try and get you, even though he's got no arms left. Yeah, so the rock throwing attack. So again, on the tick event, I'm just changing states, and I'm calling. Basically, I'm setting which animation to use and so on. When the rock throwing animation happens, that animation is calling notifies for these custom events, and so pretty much then this happens. So again, I'm setting some booleans just to set the correct states or animation behavior. I'm unhiding the rock as soon as he spawns the rock. I'm unhiding it, and I'm spawning some particles. And then as soon as he throws the rock, some new stuff happens, and I have this can throw so that I can interrupt it. Like I've said before, you can actually, you can spawn the rock, but he's not necessarily going to throw it depending on when the state changes. And this is why I have this crushing the rock thing. And I think I spoke about this in the previous video, but really what I wanted to do there is I just thought it would be cool to do it. I don't have to do it like that. I can have it finish what it's busy doing and then go into the next thing. But I think it's cool that he can either interrupt himself, or you can interrupt him by moving closer or further away. And on that interruption, if he has a rock in his hand, he'll crush it and then go into the next thing. And I just thought that would be a cool little, just a cool little thing for the boss to do. So a cool little thing turned into a big setup process, but it turns out pretty cool. So yeah, so if he throws the rock, he throws the rock. So again, hide the current rock in his hand and spawn the projectile. And again, the projectile is going to spawn based on the arrow direction. So the arrow is aiming at the player, so I'm throwing the rock at the player. And so that's for both arms. Crushing the rock, so again, going into the crush animation, and the animation calls this. So as soon as the animation is blended in and it's ready to actually crush the rock, this is what happens. I'm just hiding the current rock, and I'm spawning a new actor that is actually I'm actually spawning a blueprint at this point. It's actually a blueprint that I made separately so that I have all the bits and pieces already inside that blueprint, and I just spawn that blueprint, and then that blueprint takes care of what happens when you've crushed the rock. So I spawn a bunch of rigid bodies. Some of the rigid bodies has some particle stuff on them, because some of them has glowing material and some don't. And so the ones with the glowing material has a little bit of flames on them. I'm spawning some sparks and all that kind of thing. And then I'm also taking care of how do they disappear, because I can't have rigid bodies just build up and build up and build up and they never go away. So within that blueprint I have some timing events, and I'll show that blueprint, but maybe then I'll talk about it. But I have some timing events and they disappear properly and all that. So I think I'll show that blueprint next, just real quick. So the head look at, when I can do it, I ramp it in. When I can't do it, I ramp it out. Simple. It just takes care of the alpha value that gets set in the animation blueprint. So stopping the ground pound attack, basically it just means that I set some booleans and I disable all collisions and stuff. So again, this is called from the animation. So right at the end of the animation I call this stuff. So now you can't hit his arms anymore, you can't run into the arms anymore. He's pulling back, basically going into his either idle state or the next attack state, or whatever the case might be. And this calls the actual ground pound event. So really what this does is, so I'll get to that just now. Play some camera shake, spawn some emitters, that is basically the special effects for hitting the ground. I've got the collision set, and I'm just checking if I can damage the right arm or not, which means either the left arm or the right arm has been broken at that point. And let's just see, what am I spawning? Spawning the impact particle, spawning the impact. Yeah, so this is just to check whether the left arm is if the right arm was broken, then skip it. If the left arm is broken, otherwise do this. If the left arm is broken, do this, or not broken, do this. If it was broken, then skip it. If none of them are broken, do all of this. It's essentially just double. It's for both arms. Spawn the effects and set the collisions, and spawn the effects and set the collisions. Okay, so that pretty much wraps it up for the bosses. And you can see it's actually extremely simple. There's a bunch of stuff to keep track of when setting it up, and it grows bigger and bigger as new stuff gets added. But it's all this. It's pretty much all the same. And and again, a lot of this stuff can probably be dealt with in a way that it's easier to keep track of. But like I said, when I started the boss, it was very early on in the project, and my way of thinking of creating these things very linear. That has changed over the course of the project. So now when I do some new stuff, I would try and think about it more in, I guess I'll call it a parallel fashion, where I can make things easier or reusable, or just simpler in general. But still the boss is so simple. even this way of doing it, works fairly in a fairly simple and straightforward way. Um, so enemy projectiles. Oh, what I didn't talk about, I kind of I guess I just uh, forgot about it. I skipped over it. Um, for the ground pound event, there are some rocks falling from the roof or the ceiling or whatever. Supposed to be knocking down stalactites, even though it'll seem like there's an infinite amount of stalactites. That's games for you. Really, what that is, I just spawn another blueprint where I control the stalactite. So when I spawn this blueprint, it then takes care of what happens with the stalactites, and all it really is kind of a random pattern of spawning projectiles downwards. So flying down -z, and that blueprint on its own takes care of where the player is and will kind of keep spawning rocks around the player. And that's really all it is. So the boss just kind of says, okay, I've hit the ground, let's get some rocks falling. And then the boss doesn't care, the boss blueprint doesn't care about anything else. He just says now there's supposed to be rocks falling, and the rocks falling blueprint then takes care of how that happens and where it happens and so on, and for how long it happens and all that. So I just wanted to show, I think it's in here, rock static. Sorry, I'm just trying to I think I just used this one. Yeah, so I think this is pretty much the same blueprint. So when I throw a rock and it hits the ground, I think I also spawn this blueprint. That's a rock projectile. See, I know I have a base projectile. Anyway, I'm a bit lost in my own project, but anyway, so when a rock breaks, I spawn in this blueprint or actor, and really all it is a bunch of rock bits. Some of them has glowing material on with a light attached to it. And since the light's pretty small, it's a small radius, no shadow casting or anything, it's actually pretty cheap. You can get away with it pretty easily. And it just looks much better, obviously. Add all these things to an array. Just get the length of it because I'm going to use it later. Pretty much get the first 5, I think, and then spawn emitters on them, and when that's a for loop, so it goes through the whole array and just checks, like gets the first 5 essentially, and then gets the last 5, sorry. And as the rock breaks, I spawn a particle system. So it's kind of like a sparks and some smoke and stuff like that. I set the translucency order for the sort priority because there's like originally I had some problems with it flickering a little bit, so I'm just pushing it. I'm just pushing it forward a little bit, and then I'll run the destroy loop. So I'll show just the destroy loop just now. So also I'm checking my detail mode. So I've got 3 detail levels currently, low, medium and high, and so I just make sure that the lights, so on the low detail I basically have no lights, on the medium detail I have a smaller light, and on the high detail I have a larger light, and that just sets the light radius. So I have in various places in my game I have checks like that to see for spawning effects or for doing various things, so that on my low detail settings things don't get too much, and on the high it's the best. It's basically the targeted quality, and then medium is somewhere in between, and this is how I do stuff like that. So I just check against the detail mode. So the destroy loop is basically I just get each rock, and based on a delay of 0.5 seconds, I'll pretty much set the collision. Let me just see what I do. Set the collision, yeah, so the first delay, the rock will basically fall through the ground. So I set the collision to ignore everything. So the rock will fall through the ground, and then half a second later it'll get completely destroyed. So that's just to give it time, like with the light radius and stuff like that. That's just to give it enough time so that when it falls through the ground, it's far enough so when I destroy it, the light doesn't just switch, or it happens smooth. Everything happens smoothly. So this is on a loop, and it'll go through destroy rock 1, destroy rock 2, 3, 4, and so on. And so the reason why I do it like that is just so it's not so in your face. Like if there's a bunch of rocks lying on the floor and they all just go and they're gone, it just doesn't look that good. So there you see a bunch of rocks falling on the ground, and now if you can keep track of it through all what's happening, it's a bit hard, but they kind of fall one by one. So these other ones you can see as well. So they fall through the ground at a in a staggered fashion instead of all at once. And for the stalactites, because they kind of I guess I can even randomize that a little bit, where because the stalactites fall on the ground so close together, a lot of the rocks actually seem to fall through the ground fairly even, or at the same time. And I guess I can stagger even that a little bit, but you get the idea. It's a lot less in your face, and when you're playing the game and you're keeping your eye on the boss and stuff like that, it's very unnoticeable. But the thing kind of clears itself out, without being in your face. So anyway, I guess this video has run on for long enough. That's the boss so far. He's got quite a bit of stuff left on him that I plan to do. I would say currently he's roughly halfway done, or something like that, maybe a little bit over halfway done, but yeah, I just wanted to show it, just to show something like this. There's multiple ways of doing everything you do. This is my way of doing it. the way I did this was very directly related to the way I did it in the UDK with Kismet. Um, and so my way of thinking was still very related to that. If I redid it from scratch, I would probably do some things different, but end up with fairly similar ideas of how to do it. So anyway, that's it for this video. That's it, I guess, for the whole boss so far. If anybody watched this far, thanks for watching. And again, as I always say, any questions or anything, post in the messages, or if you watch it through the forum, post in the forum. And yeah, so thanks.